Welcome into the Inside Bassmaster Podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Ronnie Moore, and my co-host, like normal, Mr. Kyle Jessie. Kyle, you've been on the road a little bit. You just got back to your place. As we're shooting episode 102 of the podcast, the Bass Nation Championship, one of the final events of our bass season, is wrapping up today. So shortly after this podcast ends, we will know in real time our final qualifier for the Bassmaster Elite Series roster next year, and 3 more classic spots will be decided with 1 remaining, and that would be the team championship in December. So Kyle, it's been a busy tournament season, but we see light at the end of the tunnel. Everything's winding down, and we can kind of take, I guess, evaluation of everything that went right, everything that went wrong, what we need to do for next year, because we only have, a month and a half, 2 months tops before we're back in the swing of tournament action in February.
Yeah, the season lasts as long as it. So basically, like, the season ends just in time for us to start the next season is basically what it feels like. There's technically, I guess, a little bit of an off season. Basically, the month of end of the month of December. I wouldn't even say the full month of December. And then you're basically right back to it in January with some event of some sort. Typically a college tournament the last couple of years, but no, like you said, kind of coming to the end of the season. Bittersweet, mostly sweet right now. But it's starting to look at 2023 a little bit.
Yeah, we get a little bit of turkey in our stomachs, and then we cover another bass tournament, and then we open some presents, and then here we go. Time to preview the next season. And so my advice to you is this is going to be my 10th bass season. I think it's going to be your 5th, maybe 4th or 5th bass season.
The upcoming one will be 6th, yeah.
Oh, 6th. Okay, you're finishing your 5th. So my only advice to you, just a few more years under my belt, is take breaks when you can. I know everybody says that, but we end up getting caught up and we do not take breaks. So we'll have to pace ourselves the next few months as we try to relax a little bit and get recharged for the next season. A lot of new things coming in 2023 as well. And today's podcast episode, we're gonna kind of recount. It's I will say this, in bass fishing media, we take it easy on the anglers, and I'll be completely honest with that. We take it easy on the anglers. This isn't like the NFL or the NBA where there's reporters who cover the team and they ask you the really tough questions. Normally it's like the tough questions we ask is, man, you almost won the Classic. What's that like? And it's kind of just, they put their positive spin. Well, it's good to finish second, blah, 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 those types of things. But it's not like, hey, Matt Airy, you lost that fish in the 2021 Classic to win you the Classic. Did you really think you were going to come up short, and like really hard questions and really self-reflection in a negative light? So we're going to kind of get to do that. We're going to be positive for the most part, but we're going to be able to ask one of our anglers today about their season, about their experience, their ups, their downs. And that's kind of a good twist that we get to have with this episode of the podcast, because, being honest about it, there are times if you're a bass fisherman that you feel like you're the best angler in the world when you leave a tournament, whether it's a club tournament or a regional tournament, whatever, you think you're the best in the world. And then there's times you leave tournaments and you're ready to sell the boat and like take up checkers or golf or like croquet or something in the backyard, just because at times that's the ebbs and the flows. So today we're going to have Tristan McCormick, our 2021 College Classic bracket champion from Bethel University. He got to represent the college series all year on the Opens and at the Bassmaster Classic. He had some really high highs, but he also had some low lows, and we get to talk to him and evaluate that and also see what he has coming up for next year for 2023, other than the Bassmaster Classic, because he did punch his ticket for another Classic, which is, we'll have to get into the uniqueness of that, doing it 2 different routes back-to-back years. But Kyle, I like to ask these tough questions because we get some really thoughtful answers from anglers at times.
Yeah, no question. And I think Tristan's probably the perfect candidate to have on the podcast for this type of deal, because he's definitely a good sport. He's obviously we're definitely close with Tristan, and I think he'll be A-okay with us asking some tough questions. I mean, to your point that you made a second ago, you certainly never get on Twitter and see people bashing people because they suck or they should be fired or they should be cut, or, things like you said, like you see in pro sports or even college sports for the most part. That's really not the case with fishermen. The worst case scenario for a fisherman really is somebody telling them that you messed up their fantasy team, and that's about it.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
exactly.
we're definitely gonna get into some questions with Tristan. I'm definitely looking forward to catching up with him, and like you said, kind of seeing what he's got going moving forward.
I think I can't remember which football player it was, but there was one the other day that posted on his Instagram story that says, "I don't give a bleep about your fantasy team. Stop messaging
Devontae
me about
Smith.
it." Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Devontae Smith. See, I was close. I thought it was Jerry Judy, but they were college teammates, but different school. Yeah, Devontae Smith said, "I don't care about your fantasy team." And I don't think the Atlanta Falcons cared about my fantasy team last night against the Panthers because they did not run the ball with Cordarrelle Patterson. They did not throw the ball to Kyle Pitts. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, normally one thing that I really enjoy is when me and you both know these anglers, whether because we were fans and we know the history of them, or certain events we paid attention really intently and we remember those things, or it's because we get to see things behind the scenes, or we get to hear their true, honest assessment of things, and we get to phrase questions differently. And I always love those Bassmaster Classic Media Day interviews. Most of the time, it's a positive thing because everyone's fishing the Classic. But when I have the 10 anglers on live each day either come after weigh-in and sit in the chair, or before the tournament starts, come and sit. And we get to talk to them about it. And guys like Jason Christie and Gerald Swindle and Greg Hackney, I got to be honest and real with them at the Classic this year and say, hey, like, you three are some of the most veteran anglers in the Classic. You also have never won one. Jason, you've been really close. What's the deal on closing the deal here? And then also I get to say, hey, Swindle, you're pretty consistent, but you're not in the spring classics. I don't know what the deal is. And same thing with Hackney. It's like every summer classic, Hackney had a shot to win, but these spring classics, he just never did. And I get to ask those tough questions, and they kind of look at me in the interview, and I'm waiting for them to just reach across and punch me in the mouth. But most of the time it triggers in their mind, and they know that I know something about them, or I've done my research. And they respect those hard questions because they know it's not easy. The first 2 or 3 years of your career, you're probably like, bro, I'm young, give me a shot, and you get defensive about it. But these guys who have been here for a long time know that, hey, there's very few that get to cross the stage with the winning bag. So a little bit of reflection from a younger angler who at times I think that the younger anglers are a little bit harder on themselves for sure. You get a little less hard on yourself as you get older, but the instantaneous aspect of having to catch them to make the Elite Series, or having to catch them to step up in the industry, it's there. The pressure's there. And so these guys take it on the chin when they don't do well.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is it's easy to look at it through our scope, or, a fan scope, watching the events. You think maybe these guys, our perspective is that having a top, 50 place finish or finishing in the money is is a good finish. But these guys are competitive. I mean, they want to win every single tournament. And even if they finish 12th or 13th or 8th or 7th or whatever, which is a great finish in bass fishing, they're still mad that they didn't win. So, I mean, you knowing these things and us knowing these things and asking these questions, I mean, these are the things that bug these guys too. So, I mean, it's not like you said, it's a difficult thing to ask these questions, but at the same point, that's what's at the front of their mind. So yeah, I'm 100% with you there. Kind of to your point that you were talking about with asking guys questions at the Classic.
Oh, boom.
Hey, there you go, Papaw. There you go, Papaw. We're doing it, man.
There we go, Kyle. We got our boy Tristan McCormick on, and we talked about it before we brought him in, just about the highs and the lows in bass fishing, kind of how the younger anglers are oftentimes hard on themselves these days compared to maybe veterans of the sport that understand the roller coaster aspect. And Tristan, I wanted to just kick it off with that question. You got to jump up to the big boy leagues and the opens this past season from the college series. What was that transition like? Because it's one of those deals, you're now making the decisions on your own, every single wrong or right decision's on you. And man, these guys are tough. They're unforgiving if you slip a little in the opens each day.
Yeah, Ronnie, they are. And the transition from college to the, quote unquote big leagues is a big step, because in the college program, you always have your partner to rely on. Well, maybe I caught one fish, but my partner filled the limit that day or whatever. You do not have that. So it's all a mindset game when it comes to that, because you're making the decisions, you're making the cast, you're making the calls. It's all on you. So yes, it is a big jump. But when you have one good, just say you have one good tournament, it gets the momentum rolling. And you're like, your brain cells start clicking, like, I can do this. I have what it takes and I can make the calls. And, we're all going to screw up. We're humans. We're going to make a bad call. We're going to lose fish. But, my motto this year has been control what I can control. And I've said that so many times here in the last couple months because, it's true. You can't control a fish jumping off on a treble hook with jerk bait. There's just certain things you have to overcome because if you don't overcome them, they're just going to ruin your whole day.
Tristan, you kind of mentioned it there. I was sitting here looking at your your results from this year, and you mentioned momentum, and you look at your last 4 events, obviously a 13th place at Oneida, a 105th, which is the outlier at Upper Chesapeake, but then a first, obviously, at Hartwell, and then a 4th at Sam Rayburn. Just talk to me about your mindset from the first of the year when it was, pretty consistently tough to the end of the second half of the season, I guess, where, you really got things rolling big time.
Starting the year, I put way too much pressure on myself because, you fish open, everybody thinks about the leaks. That's the whole goal. And you're like, well, I can't finish no lower than 60th place here or 30th place here. So that really, gets to your mind and you start making dumb decisions and you're not just fishing clean, you're fishing too fast, or at least I was. So after that midway point season where you're talking about, I was out of it in the leaks. I was like, you know what? I'm going to just go do my thing. I'm going to fish how I want to fish. And the events, lined up for it. And they were really good events, but I didn't have that pressure on me building on my shoulders to try to qualify for the leagues. Now, that's everybody's goal. I want to be there one day. There's a lot of people I want to be there. But for me going into it next time, I know that I have to, zone that stuff out. Because if I don't, it's just going to be another recap of this or beginning of the season. I'm going to put way too much pressure on myself because we all want to go out there and make it happen in the first 5 or 6 events. And, if that happens, your rest of the season's ruined basically point wise.
Talk to me a little bit about the Bassmaster Classic. It's obviously a dream of so many anglers to make, and you won the College Classic bracket in 2021 right there against, Tucker Smith. With the way that tournament went, he had a big lead on you. You guys are fishing close to each other. You had to clear your head. You make a run, you come back, and then all of a sudden you start catching them and you beat him by just a few ounces to make the Classic. For one, that's a feat to get there. What was it like experiencing your first Bassmaster Classic with the intention of, hey, I want to make it back here, but it's never a guarantee to come back? Now we know at the end of the year, you are going to another Bassmaster Classic. You will have another shot at the biggest tournament in the sport. But that first one, going in as the college representative, you were catching them pretty good, but you missed the cut. But it was one of those deals that, you got your redemption later on that lake. But the Classic had to be special to you, and it had to put some things in perspective after the first few opens.
Yeah, it truly did, Ronnie. The Bassmaster Classic is just earth. And going into my first one this March on Hartwell, we all think of, like what it's like, the behind the scene type of stuff. Well, maybe this will happen, maybe this won't. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you, it was everything I dreamed of and 30 times better. And I tell everybody, like, you're being treated like a king when you're there, and nice hotels, the dinners, just being around the atmosphere. And my first one, I was trying to soak all that up, right? Because like you said, it's not a guarantee you're going to be back. Even the elite guys, it's not a guarantee they're going to be back the following year. So knowing that, I went into it, we all want to do good, of course, but I was wanting to experience the whole thing. And I did. And like I said, I was catching them, but it wasn't good enough. And so going into this Bassmaster Classic at Knoxville in my home state, I don't know if there's more pressure built up on it now than there was my first one because I'm going to have so many people there. I've already had hundreds of people tell me from, the hometown of Tennessee they're going to be there. So in the back of my head, that's a lot of pressure. But back to what I was saying, going into this Classic, there's going to be a different mindset, a different mind game, and I'm going to be focusing a lot more on the fishing aspect of it. Because, like I said, we kind of know what's going to expect and how it's going to roll. So this time going into it, I'm focusing on the fishing part, and we're gonna see what happens.
I couldn't help but smile during Ronnie's question there and your answer, because I remember talking to you a lot, obviously there at the Classic, and I could tell that you truly were like soaking it all in and really like understanding, and could, you just had a feel for how, special and important it was that you were at the Classic. And it seems like, a lot of times people get there and it's just like shell shock. Like you don't even understand like what's going on. But I could tell, like watching you that whole week, like you truly understood what that meant. And you're 24 years old and you're about to fish your second Classic. Like, could you have ever imagined that as a Bethel freshman, or, how, when you came out of high school, could you have ever imagined that you'd be right here at this moment?
No, it's far from what I imagined. And, like I said, being 24 years old and accomplishing what I've already accomplished, it's truly a blessing. It really is. And it caught me off guard. The Hartwell really caught me off guard. And, backing up to college, I never won one. I was close several times, and I fished 5 years at Bethel, and I guess I just decided to wait till the last tournament of my college career to win. But, I went out with a slam, and looking back, it's just crazy, and I think of that day me and Tucker was fishing on the Alabama River in Wetumpka, and I just replay it in my head a lot because that was the boost of my career. That's what started my career, was that tournament in particular. It led me to the Classic, led me to the Opens. Maybe if I wouldn't have won that, I wouldn't have won Hartwell this year. So looking back on it, I'll always remember that Pacific tournament because that's what really boosted my career.
And it kind of seemed like your final day of that college Classic bracket was indicative of your open season. It's obviously a couple months stretch, but like the beginning of that final day, the first half of the day seemed like the first half of your season this year, and the second half of the day when you stopped worried about, seeing your competitor over there catch them has to be hard to figure it out, especially when you don't have other places necessarily to run. But you did make a run, you did clear your head, and you came back. Second half of your day was obviously great. Second half of your open season was great. But Kyle, I'm not going to let him off the hook on this one. He was truly a rookie at the Classic this year, because I had to save his butt and get his credit card from the Night of Champions tab, because he left that sucker and he had no way to get back and get it. And I was like, this is Tristan's card. Do I leave it or do I bring it? And so I saved Tristan. I should have spent some money before I gave him the card back, but I didn't do that. But so yeah, Tristan, you said this year's going to be more of a mindset on the fishing aspect of it. But who is Tristan McCormick as a fisherman? We know that you're a younger angler, so we know technology is going to factor in your game plan. But there are some Bassmaster Elite Series pros who are always in the top 10 in Angler of the Year after the first 2 or 3 events, and those are the colder pre-spawn, spawn events. And then as we get later in the year, they start to fade. Meanwhile, there are guys who start to rise up when the smallmouth deal happens. You see those ebbs and flows of who is really good in certain regions. Who are you as an angler, and what makes you tick? And is it really the fall, the time of the year that you're going to excel? Because it seems like you do a lot of good work then.
Ronnie, I love the fall, just because there's so much going on. There's a lot of fish moving around, a lot of transition stuff happen. But that's the best time, in my opinion, to use your electronics, because they're chasing bait, they're feeding up for the winter time. But growing up on Kentucky Lake, right down the road from where I'm at now, and I love current. Like I feel like that's my deal. You can use electronics in that scenario, but it's truly not. You go fish current. And growing up on Kentucky Lake, current breaks. That's all I got to say. Everybody knows what a current break is, and you can catch them cast after cast after cast if you find that place. So me personally, fall for sure, but like the early year from where you're starting to warm up those days, getting into springtime, I truly do like that. And like I said, it's all current related. So in my head, I think it's easier because they're gonna have all the fish grouped up, on a certain current break or a point or a mouth of a pocket or whatever. But if I had to choose, of course I would choose electronics, because that's what I love to do. I can see them, you know what I mean, and then you got to trick them to bite. But going into Classic, I've had a little experience on Loudon. It's a Tennessee River, so I got some things in my head, what I think's gonna happen. Maybe this, maybe not, but I am gonna go spend some time down there. before the off limits and really just look at the whole, because it's a really long system. You know what I mean? The part we're fishing, it's long. Like you can go a long ways. So that's going to come into factor as well, because we're not going to have as much fishing time when we're running an hour or just say 2 hours. So that's going to have to, it's going to be interesting to see how the guys, approach it. You watch when Gussie won, everybody knows where he won, smallmouth deal. But you flash back, what year was that when Ott Defoe won? 2018, 17? 2019. But you look back, what Ott did, I feel like that's my bread and butter. That's Kentucky Lake bar fishing. Caught him on a stump. Then Wheeler's catching them on a riprap on a crankbait, smallmouth. I mean, that's current related stuff. So, like I said, back to the question, it's a toss up for me, really. Love the fall, and I love the early spring transition. It's just a transition deal for me, because there's so much you can do. You can go do a lot of different things that produce a bite, instead of just, I've got to go flip these fish and for spawning fish or whatever. Like in Florida, I've got to go put a big weight in my hand. You can spread out and you can cover a lot more water, in my opinion.
Tristan, kind of switch gears here a little bit. I was thinking this before we even started the podcast. Growing up and even today, who are some of your biggest fishing influences? Like could be pros, people you fished with growing up, things of that nature. Who are some of the people that influence you a lot as a bass fisherman?
Other than Cole Floyd and other than Carter McNeil and other than
I actually wanted to get into that, because I didn't want to get into the Bethel thing yet, but I feel like that's a huge part of this. But we'll get to that.
We'll do that later. We'll get to that eventually. But when I was younger and starting out, I mean, nobody knows this about me. I didn't grow up in a fishing family. Just a little flashback. I grew up riding horses, traveling the country from the time I could walk till I was 12. That's what I did. I won a lot of world titles, couple world championships, and I got burnt out on it. And that's when I transitioned to the fishing. We moved back to Tennessee, but there was one person that kind of took me underneath his wing, and he's gone now, but his name was Kevin Tipple, and he taught me so much about the bass fishing aspect, how the fish relate, what do they do, and I mean, I learned so much with him, and it was unfortunate because I only got to spend, about 6 or 7 tournaments in the boat with him, and he had a freak accident and passed away. So, that's one individual over anybody I think that's really, set the bar for me and really kind of put me in the driver's seat where I am at today.
What was your first Bassmaster experience of either watching a classic, or maybe it was something Kevin, shared with you? If he obviously took you fishing and showed you that, you might have had some stories from him, but your first kind of introduction to Bassmaster and a moment that sticks with you, either in person or on TV, that you watched and was like, man, that was really cool. And it's something that I'll remember for a long time.
So the first classic, believe it or not, I actually got to watch in person was the Knoxville when Ott won.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I mean, that was the first Bassmaster Classic I've ever been to. And because, I've always watched it on TV. Like, the most memorable thing probably is when Jordan won back-to-back. But it was actually his first one. And his mom got up there and said, Jordan Lee just won the Bassmaster Classic. Dude, I have watched that video and bawled my eyes out. I'm not kidding you, probably 100 times, and that's, I mean, because it's such an amazing accomplishment, and it's so hard to get there. And when it happens, and who knows what's going to happen this year or down the road. I'd love to win one, but that's for sure what I remember most was when Jordan Lee's mom got up there and said that. And I mean, I showed my mom when she cried. I was like, I want to be there one day for sure.
So Ronnie kind of teased this, but I do want to get back into it with the whole Bethel connection, because he hit the nail on the head. That's exactly where I wanted to take that.
Who was the nicest? Who's better than you? No, I'm just kidding.
not necessarily that. More just the phrase that comes to my head when I think about that class of Bethel fishermen is iron sharpens iron. I mean, there were some hammers that fished at Bethel at the same time frame that you did. And I feel like every single one of those guys benefited from the other ones. I mean, I feel like that has to be true. So kind of tell me a little bit about your experience there and, being able to fish with and around a lot of those guys that are now fishing professionally.
Yeah, so we had a really tight group there. I believe that was my sophomore year when Cole Floyd, Cody Garrett, KJ, John Garrett. We had a tight circle, and it was cool because that group was from all over the country. Cole's Ohio, Carter's South Carolina, we're Tennessee, Garrett's somewhere up north, can't remember. But
Pennsylvania, and then Cody's from Missouri.
Yeah. So you take all that and you look at the different bodies of waters that everybody is from, and you get in the boat on the shores of Kentucky Lake, and Cody says, well, let's run over here and try this. This is what they do on Bull Shoals. And we roll over there and freaking jack them. It's like, dude, did that really happen? Like, we just start looking at each other like, did that really happen? So, and then just traveling with those guys to all the places we went to in the college series, which is amazing. If somebody's on here watching that wants to fish college, go fish it, because I promise you, you will learn more about the sport of bass fishing, and you will grow friendships that will last a lifetime. And so yeah, back to the Bethel aspect of it. It's truly amazing. You look, there's KJ, Cole, Cody. That's 3 of them already on the pros.
John Garrett's been within a spot like 4 times of making it. Yeah.
First guy out like 4 times in a row, and then he screwed up at the Classic deal too, when he should have won that. So, I mean, I feel like he's going to do it this year or next year in 2024, dude, because he's been so freaking close, and I feel bad for him, dude. It's like, John, what can I do to help? You know what I mean? Because he's like right there every single time. It's always comes down to
3, 4, 5. That just learning that right there, he's in the Classic. Now, I always mess with John about that, the culling and fracture, but that is the adversity. You don't get me wrong, you would have loved to win the college Classic bracket by 30 pounds. You would have loved to have destroyed them on the final day, but we will always remember your winning day because it was so 0 to hero moment. John, when he made the Classic, he had made it through all the levels and qualified to make it on Kentucky Lake and then dominated. Like, there's certain things you always remember. And the adversity that John has faced is the same kind of adversity that you faced this year in the Opens, where you're like, you said you put pressure on yourself. You want to know, can I make it at this level? Can I compete? And you stick with it through the tough ones. And then the last 2, you get in the top 5. 3 of the last 4, you're in the top 15, things like that. So the adversity aspect of it, we would love for it to be easy breezy and you just make it through. But oftentimes those struggles, they're remembered by so many, and that's what encourages others to keep going whenever it does get tough on them and not quit.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, when the wheels get turning, they're turning. You know what I mean? The momentum's rolling. You just come off a top 5 finish at so-and-so lake. You're like, dude, let's freaking go. Let's go the next lake. I'm fired up. And like everything starts clicking. You start making good decisions. You're casting great. All your equipment's running good. Like, there's just certain things you cannot screw up when that momentum gets going. You know what I mean? So it happens to everybody. I mean, you look at the elite guys, Paul Nix, the Brandon Lesters. I mean, when them guys get on a roll, dude, there ain't a daggum truck stopping that train. I mean, it's moving.
So here's a question for you, and you might not know the answer to this, but I at least want to know your approach at it. You hardly could have finished the season any hotter than you did. How do you continue that momentum to next year with this long of a break between now and the next time you fish an event?
I'm a big hunter and I love duck hunting. I love deer hunting, but for me, I'm going to spend a lot of time on the water this winter. And that's something I normally don't do because I'm so fired up to go hunting, but I got my new boat right here in front of me. I'm in between rigging boats. So as soon as that thing gets rigged, I'm going to spend a lot of time on the water, try to become a better angler, stay in tune, get all my equipment running right. So when the season starts, it's not just boom, you roll into the first tournament, hadn't fished in 2 months because you've been in a deer stand or whatever. So I'm just going to try to keep I guess you could say, the wheels greased up. You know what I mean? Keep everything moving. You know, keep all the moving parts lubricated, and so that way, when the season starts, it's right where we left off.
Before we jump into what's on deck for you in 2023, I promised the viewers before we added you into the call that we would ask some tough questions. We often do softball, easy questions in bass fishing. No one's ever really hard on anglers or like they are on other athletes. And so I want to go through your standings of this year in the Opens. You fished 8 of the 9 Opens. You finished 89th in Florida. You had the Classic. You finished 71st at Cherokee, 103rd at the James River. Tell me about those first 3 events, because those were all, you know, from the month of April and earlier. Florida, obviously, and then your home state on smallmouth and a place you fished in college, and then the James River, a tidal place. 3 different places. And, you know, you caught 8 pounds a day and change in Florida. And then you caught the next 2 about, you know, 12 pounds a day roughly. So what was the deal? Was it getting situated? Was it boat draws? Was it community hold? What went right in those events that you learned from, and what went wrong that you learned from, or you didn't learn from, and you just there? I mean, it was just terrible.
Dude, them were mega bags, like 8 pounds a day in Florida. Come on. No, I struggle in Florida. I really do. But for that being the first event in the Opens, I've never fished an Open until that one. You know, it was different. Didn't know really what to expect. You know, everybody runs tournaments different, from the college to this and that. And, you know, I'm thinking like, well, you know, how's boat check going to be? How's this going to be? And, you know, how's blast off, this and that, weigh-in procedure. So it was a lot, you know, and fishing was terrible. It was god awful. It was like 30 degrees in Florida. Like really? But, you know, moving, Lester won that. That was awesome to see. Moving on. What was the next one, Cherokee?
Cherokee. That was a 2-day weather impacted, canceled one of the days. So that was a full field 2-day deal. It was a little bit different, but it was smallmouth, but it's on that weird line of the year where the water's starting to rise, but it's also, you know, kind of figuring it out.
Yeah, so Cherokee, I felt good about that one. I really did. I rolled in, and we was there, and we went there for college a handful of times, and they were kind of doing the same thing when we went there one year in college. So I started running around the first day of practice, pulled up to a place, caught a 4-pounder. I was like, all right, rolled up to the next one, caught another big one. I was like, I might do something here. Well, then the first day got canceled because it was blowing 100 mile an hour in Tennessee. And so it became a 2-day tournament, and a lot of things changed that I did not pick up on until literally the last hour. I mean, the first day I survived. I had a decent bag. I was in check range.
What was your strategy on that? What did you fish, deep smallmouth, or were you trying to cruise the bank and cover water, or what?
So we do a deal there in college, you know, like Floyd, KJ, all them guys, we kind of all figured out. And it's a little bitty ball head that we had made with a little 2/8 Kitech, and we was just going to these long points and just slowly winding it, you know, throwing it up in 10 foot of water, bringing it all the way out in the 40s, you know, even 50s sometimes. And smallmouth, you just have to figure out what depth of smallmouth are, because smallmouth really relate. If they're in 12 foot, you can go to the next place and catch them in 12 foot. Like, they're really established on where they sit in the water column. So I was doing that, and the first day I burned everything I had, which I was not going to leave nothing out there. And the second day I was an idiot, and I was like, well, let's just go back through. Maybe I can pick off 1 or 2 more. Well, I'm doing it like 3:30, and it's 2:45, and I don't have a bass one. And I was like, all right, let's go to the dam. So I remember I called my buddies, and I was like, dude, I cannot believe I did this. I went and fished new water. Pulled up to a mouth of a pocket, started throwing a jerkbait, caught one instantly. I was like, okay. Went to the next one, caught one instantly. I was like, you know, this might be a pattern. Went to the next one, caught one. So I caught a limit in literally the last 50 minutes, 45 minutes of the tournament. I had 5 bites, but I caught a limit. And for me, in my head, I was like, Tristan, you've got to learn from this. You just went out of your circle, what you found in practice, never even threw a jerkbait in practice, and you went and fished something else. You went fishing. You went and trusted your instincts, trusted your decisions. And And that tournament, I'm glad you pointed it out, because that tournament really started getting some things clicking. You know what I mean? Because it's so hard when you get so dialed in on something in practice. Catching nice fish. 3+ pounders, fish that can do really, really well in tournaments like that. So getting out of that zone is huge for me. I feel it, because I don't. It's hard to go into a tournament like, well, I caught 2 4-pounders on this point and I caught a 5 on the next point. I'm just gonna fish these for my half a day, dude. It ain't never gonna work like that. You know what I mean? So that was really the tournament that like started getting some things clicking in my head, and I was like, well, maybe I need to expand more, not get so locked into one thing in practice.
And so as we go to the worst part of your season, I'll just say the one thing I say on the Elite Series is everyone who makes the Elite Series has the ability to get a top 20. They have the skills to get a top 20. The key on staying on the Elite Series is learning to not finish in the bottom 20, knowing how to survive and keep a 75th or better, or keep a 65th or better. If you're not going to make the cut, just barely missing it and somehow salvaging it. And a lot of guys have saved a lot of AOI points doing that. These next 3, I feel like you were either not on them at all, or you were going for a win, and it ends up not working out, and you finish in a triple-digit finish, which you never want. But 3 difficult, and maybe we found your kryptonite, but 2 of these are tidal bodies of water, and all 3 of them, for the most part, are pretty dirty water places. The James River, Ross Barnett, and the Upper Chesapeake Bay. So tell me about those 3. It might be the same experience in those 3, but they definitely were. I figured you'd have some kind of power fishing or flipping tournament that would show up for you. And I thought it might be one of those 3, and it just didn't happen. So tell me about those 3.
Yeah, those 3, they were tough, dude. Like those were some of the toughest practices. I mean, at Ross Barnett, I think the best day in practice I had was maybe 2 keepers. And Ross Barnett, I actually found something the day of the tournament and something I could run. It was kind of what Coop was doing, fishing offshore hard spots. And I actually caught a limit that day. But, dude, those tournaments are tough for me because I hate muddy water. I really hate fishing the bank. Just because in my head, like when I'm going down a bank, I could be flipping Kissimmee grass or a patch of reeds or whatever. All I'm thinking about is, how many boats have come down this? How many times has this been flipped today? That's literally all. I know it's terrible to say. There's shallow water guys watching this probably like, this dude's an idiot, but literally that's all I think. And I'm sure guys think the same thing about fishing offshore, a point or whatever. But in my mind, I feel like I can outfish those guys offshore. I don't feel like I can outfish the shallow water guys when I'm fishing shallow. So, those tournaments, they were all shallow water deals. I really enjoyed the James River. I had a really good first day. I caught a giant, lost another big one. I should have had a really big bag, but the second day, everything, and that was another stupid decision of mine. I was fishing the pits, and they were spawning. You couldn't see them, but I was throwing just a drop shot up there, dragging it off the bank, and there was 25 boats in there in one pit the first day, and my stupid self decided to go back in there the second day like there would be more bass in there, and there wasn't. But that was I really regret that one, because I should have took off and ran to the Chickahominy River. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
Yeah, and because I practiced down there and had a lot of bites. So that's one of those deals again. Like I was saying, that's your decisions. That's where you got to learn from your mistakes. And that tournament, I learned from that mistake. I mean, looking back at it, it was easy to say that I shouldn't have went back in there and try to recatch bedding fish. Maybe some moved up, maybe not, but they didn't for me. So I knew, looking back on it, I should have went and fished my backup area or just go fish new water, because it was that time of year. There's fish pulling up everywhere. You could have pulled into a creek in practice and not took a bite 3 days ago and pull up there in the tournament, and there's 20 pounds laying everywhere. So, but yeah, like you said, those 3 tournaments, Chesapeake, Ross Barnett, and Upper Bay, gosh almighty, that was terrible. Dude, that tournament. Oh my goodness. There wasn't, I don't think there was nobody really just lighting the world on fire in that tournament. I mean, it even like I watched live the whole way home, and dude, it was pretty bad.
It was tough. It was a tough weight overall, and that's what we start to see. For one, there was different conditions there. I mean, when you have a 2-day lead by Chris Boudry of 7 pounds and you don't win the event when most people are catching 13 pounds, that's how you know it's tough, because you're going to have a tough day. You just don't want it to be the last day. But now to the positive aspect, before I let Kyle jump back in, the last three that I wanted to talk about was Oneida, 13th place, your win at Hartwell, and then obviously Rayburn, 4th place. We've talked about the fall before for those last two events, but tell me about what you've learned about smallmouth, being a guy from Tennessee. You catch smallmouth other than Wheeler and the dams at Pickwick, probably, and Wilson. Kentucky Lake's probably the best Tennessee river lake for smallmouth, it seems. So did you know a lot about smallmouth, or did you learn a lot this year when you went up there for a couple different events, including the Open at Oneida?
So the last 3 summers, I've spent about 6 months up north. I got my camper right here. Before, the Toyota, I'd stay up there because that's looking at all the coverage from other organizations and Bassmaster going up north. You're always going to go up north. Always. There's always going to be an event up there. There's always going to be a smallmouth event. So knowing that, I went and spent a lot of time up there. In my opinion, I think I'm better at catching smallmouth than I am spots, largemouth. So just because I've spent so much time up there, and I've kind of got to understand them, I guess you could say. Dude, they're just so fun to catch. But Oneida, that was a really good event because, I went to Shackleton Shoals. It's a community place. That's apparently every smallmouth in the whole lake lives on it. But then again, there was a lot of boats. But in my mind, I'm like, I can outfish these guys offshore. And, that's what happened. I barely missed. I think I missed it like by 4 ounces, 5 ounces. It was close to a top 10. But back to what I was saying, spending that time up north chasing smallmouth, that's something I see a lot of guys struggle with. I see a lot of guys saying, hey, I'm not ready to go smallmouth fishing. I do not want to tie on 8-pound line, 6-pound line. I hate it. And I hear guys saying, like me, I hate going to Florida. So, you got that happy medium between guys, but at the end of the day, you've got to learn both, because we're always going to go to Florida and we're always going to go up north. I don't care what anybody says. There's always going to be at least one tournament a year in the upstate and in Florida. So knowing that, like I said, again, I spent a lot of time, started to understand them, and leading into a night, I had a lot of confidence. I went up there early and played on Ontario and St. Lawrence, just kind of got, tuned back into the smallmouth aspect of it. And it was a great event, spinning rods. I love throwing a spinning rod, dragging a drop shot around. And I weighed everything in on a baby Z2, and just simple. I think smallmouth fishing is simple. A lot of guys overthink it. They're going to be related to current. They're going to be related to rock. What else?
I think it's kind of weird, Kyle, seeing Tristan, how tall he is, that he loves picking up a spinning rod as much as he does. I feel like I'm waiting for him to just break that thing on the hook set, but he did win the bracket on it. He did win Hartwell on it, and he did get 4th at Rayburn on it, and then obviously 13th at Oneida. He may be the most intimidating tall person that throws the wimpiest setup. Who knows? That might be the deal. I'm just going to go ahead and declare that. Other than maybe if Jason Williamson picks up a spinning rod, but or Bradley Hallman maybe.
Hey, I promise you, I can swing a 7.6 extra heavy too. Don't let me fool you.
Well, I would love to see a tournament that, where you go out of your comfort zone and make it work and do it. But yeah, Kyle, what you got?
I was just going to ask, you kind of mentioned this, but where does Tristan McCormick need to get better? What if it's a part of the country, whether it be a technique, what is, or, if there's multiple, what do you feel like your weaknesses are? Like where you have to get better before you, take the next step forward?
That's a good question. I think my biggest weakness, like I said earlier, is fishing shallow because I always feel like I'm fishing behind somebody. That's probably that and muddy water, and going to places that are not producing a lot of bites, like the upper Chesapeake Bay. I've got to figure out a way to at least get 5 to 6 bites a day. And how you do that, I don't really know yet. Could be going to fish all new water in the tournament because clearly you didn't find anything in practice. It could be changing techniques. I don't know. I hadn't really figured that out yet. And I'm sure there'll be a tournament down the road where something will click, or something I did, or adjustment I made, or whatever. But I would definitely say fishing shallow, muddy water in Florida.
I'm going to ask this question because when it comes to TV shows or movies, I'm not a trendy guy. Whenever everyone is posting about this show or this series, I just like almost don't want to watch it because so many people are talking about it. Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones. I ain't watched any of those. Harry Potter, never seen any of these things. Is there a bait or technique in bass fishing that is talked about so much that you just roll your eyes at and you don't ever tie it on? You just never feel like you tie that on, and fish it, or maybe one that everyone talks about that maybe you're coming around to. I need to throw it a little bit more, maybe.
How many times? I'm gonna say this, and you tell me if you think I'm right. I think the number one bait that you hear so much about is a freaking jig.
I stink at flipping a jig. I'd much rather flip a Texas rig all day. It used to be, I think I'll tell a story. When I was a kid learning about fishing a jig, the guys at the dock would try to explain what the bite was like. They're like, it's kind of like a wet towel. It's just there. And then, and every single stick in the lake knew my name because I'm like, oh, it's just there. And then I'm like, setting the hook. And so it never really made sense to me how a Texas rig bite was different than a jig bite. And obviously I love watching Greg Hackney flip a jig and catch him on it, but it's something I've never translated to. So I'm with you on that one. I don't think a jig's overrated. I just think that it's not as easy or straightforward or a fish catcher as everyone thinks they are. Now, we'll probably get bigger bites, but let me go flip a D-bomb or something before I go do that.
Yeah.
I want to go on record saying that I completely disagree with you pansies for saying that. I could turn around right now and the stash of rods there'd be about 6 jigs tied on. It's not even a joke because I throw a jig so much.
Well, see, like Kyle, Ronnie, he loves throwing a jig. That might be his confidence bait. And there's a lot of guys on tour that is their confidence bait. Well, if I can't get a bite in practice, I'm gonna go flip wood all day with a freaking jig. Well, me, I'm gonna go flip a Texas rig. Sounds like Ronnie will too. But I think
the weigh in, big guy.
So you literally should. Yeah. So you have to go shallow. Then you said you don't like fishing behind those guys. Well, if they're all flipping a jig and you're flipping a Texas rig, then you can go behind them. There we go.
If Greg Hackney's going down the bank with a jig, I'm going 100 miles all the way.
I'm not going down there. But anybody else, I'm going
the other lake. If I see, I'm not staying around that 10-mile area. If I see Greg Hackney flipping a jig on the bank, I'm going. Not happening.
No, there are so many variables. It's how many strands, what size, line size. Do you thread your trailer? Do you hang your trailer? Do you match your trailer to your skirt color? There's so many different things. Do you even put scent on it? I feel like scent's an overrated thing these days. How many people are promoting different scents and stuff, but I don't think that's as essential as profile is or weight. But so a jig, I didn't think I'd hear a jig, but I'm glad you said that. Are there any other ones?
Look, no, I'm gonna flip the question on Ronnie Moore and Kyle Jessie. What is the number one bait that you think people talk about more than anything, or it's overrated, or what?
Glide bait.
Because y'all are behind the studio. Oh my gosh!
What did you say? What did he say?
Glide baits.
A glide bait.
Oh, glide bait.
No, thank you. I saw 36 fish today. Well, you caught 2, so you can only bring those 2 to weigh in, not what you saw. I just think that glide baits are a little overrated in terms of attracting a big bite. That's just me.
And I'll say this too. Another bait that I think's really overrated that people freaking blow up is a mag draft.
I used to think that. I don't know. Kyle's not giving his opinion, but I used to think that. But I think a mag draft or a 6-inch soft swim bait is kind of like a slightly bigger chatterbait or a spinner bait in terms of what vibration it's going to do in the draw power. I feel like I could throw a spinner bait, cut it off, tie on a mag draft, and fish the same water I was. With a glide bait, I'm over here like
it seems
hoping I did that right. I don't know.
Ronnie looked like a monkey trying to work glide bait.
It's like me fishing with a right-handed reel. I'm over here like, I'm just have to imagine there's one looking at it every time, and I'm like, well, bite the dang thing. And he's like, I just waiting for the thing to swim normally, and I'll bite it. And I'm over here like doing this.
Yeah. So you say the glide bait. Look, go ahead, Kyle.
I was gonna say to the mag draft point, I feel like, and I've only kind of gathered this from moving from Arkansas to Alabama, because in Arkansas it's a really big deal. Like the White River Lakes. Tristan, I don't know if did you fish the Bull Shoals Bassmaster event? Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I thought you did.
Like everybody had a 15-pound bag. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
and
was like
there's. Go ahead.
That was a tournament where you could pull into a pocket that's 50 by 50 and there'd be 3,000 bass on bed.
Yeah. Well, there's places and times where I feel like a mag draft is just money. And then like moving here and talking to, a bunch of the hammers that live around here, you come to find out that it might not be as big of a deal all the time. And, as we're in the spring in Arkansas, like pretty much any lake outside of, maybe a couple, like it's a factor in tournaments. And then moving here, like, seems like, at least for tournament's sake, it's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah. I will agree with, because the Bull Shoals, the Table Rocks, like those,
Hamilton,
the Clearwater,
yeah,
and
visibility seems like a big deal.
Visibility, yeah, and you're not going to get that all over the country. You know what I mean, dude? I've literally caught like 8 bass on mag draft. 8.
Was that all one trip, or was that how many is it 2 bass per trip?
This is like since the mag draft first come out.
Dang. So, I'm not a huge like bait guy, but when someone explained we can throw a 6-inch stick worm and it's the same length as a 6-inch swim bait, that changed what I thought about being too big. But yeah, no, it's all regional. I mean, I have never caught a fish on a Demiki rig. Now my drop shot stopped before it hit the bottom, but I've never caught a fish on a Demiki rig. Like I don't go out there looking for that bite.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and answer the question, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but okay. So I'm not going to say specific names of specific baits, but if I'd say,
we're doing it. We're already in it. We're already in it.
You might as well now.
You'll get it. I'm just not going to say it out loud. So I think, okay, to your point, you made a point earlier about smallmouth fishing being so simple, right? And I mean, here's my perspective, and this is coming from somebody who's basically never northern smallmouth fished. So I'll be fine with accepting I'm wrong if people disagree, whatever. I don't know how it makes such a big difference that there's one bait that every smallmouth person in the north uses, one bait, but there's 5,000 baits that are the same exact thing, like nearly the same exact thing. I mean, seems so similar, but everybody uses one bait.
I've had that question, and it feels like if you don't have that bait in your boat, that it does make a difference. I've even been in the boat with people and tried to do something different to catch fish, and after 3 or 4 fish, I'm like, nah, screw this. I'm gonna tie it on. But I'll say, all of a sudden, when did bass stop? Yeah, like when did bass stop biting a robo worm, or when did bass start biting a crosstail shad? But I will say the flatworm. It catches them, and it doesn't make sense.
Go ahead and say
necessarily.
It, yeah.
I'll go. I know what you're talking about, but I mean, it's very interesting, and it's cool to see. Like the half shell, same profile. The shad shape worm, the warning shot. They're all same profiles, but to see Jay Shakir be able to use that with confidence, the half shell, and win the St. Lawrence event.
And let me clarify. Let me clarify too. I'm not suggesting it's not a good bait, because it clearly is.
No, it just blows your mind that why it works.
It's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those things that I don't understand mentally, like why it's so much better, And like Ronnie said, I've talked to a lot of people that are also not sponsored by Berkeley, that's all they throw up there, and they are very dead set on that, like making a huge difference. But it's one of those things mentally I just can't understand.
You want it. Here's what I think about the whole flatworm deal. For years, you watch everybody throw the flatworm up north, and in your mindset, in your head, you're thinking that's the only thing I can throw up north. I feel, you know what I'm saying? You look at Jay, the half shell. The half shell is an amazing bait. I got 300 packs of laying right there. But that's like Ronnie was saying, that's his confidence bait. But when you see guys for the last 7-8 years go fish St. Lawrence, Ontario, everybody's throwing a flatworm. Well, these guys are like, I'm going to go in Tackle Warehouse and order 100 packs of flatworms. We're going up north. Like, you don't even think about another bait to throw up there except a flatworm. So to that point, I mean, you can agree or disagree with me. I feel like it's all in your head. I'm not saying a Maxent's not a great worm. It freaking flat out catches them. But Jay Shakarick just broke the Century Club with a half shell Strike King. It works.
It's like the thing. I'll say this with smallmouth. I don't know if it gets you a bigger bite. The ones that are around it bite it. But I will say I think that Jay's win. There's a couple factors. Do you have the spot to yourself? Is it a school spot, or is it like one or two fish, on a point spot, and you have to jump around?
They've been before.
And are they pressured? Yeah. So if you're in a pressured group of things, I could see where bait makes a difference, adjusting or not adjusting makes a difference. But if you have a school to yourself, once you get that profile or the color, you just ride with that until it stops working. You experiment. So I will say that, but I have asked I spent some time with Hank Cherry and asked him. He went up to Spirit Lake to do where the R&D, the actual factory is for Maxent and stuff. And he was like, I can't tell you stuff because I had to sign an NDA on like what I saw in there. But he's like, they've tested out every scent on the market, and they see where they could be better. And he's like, the product they put out is legit. And so I trust in it to a certain extent, but I do think that you can catch fish on it otherwise. So that's interesting. But those are a couple. I mean, I think about the same thing with my favorite bait. I love throwing a chatterbait before it was like super, super the deal. And now we have 17 variations of it. Yeah, there's 17 variations of it because we ourselves are putting so much pressure with the same bait that we have to now, we want to throw it, but now we have to throw a little blade or a clear blade or a tungsten head or a 1/4 or a giant blade. We have to adjust. And so I'll say that, yeah, it's a lot about what you see on social media definitely impacts what they bite. And good thing they have not overblown a spinnerbait because they'll still probably bite that, or a square bill. I haven't heard a square bill in forever. I threw one yesterday and I caught some fish on it. I was like, holy crap, they still bite this thing.
Yeah. Kind of forgot how to throw it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I don't have to stop my reel, right? I can just do it normal. And so
I'm thinking we're just going to have a monthly segment with Tristan of just bait talk. Just garage bait talk.
Yes. Tristan McCormick's hot takes. Let's go. From movies to foods to baits and to overrated lakes. We'll do it. Offend everyone. Tristan, with that being said, let's go into 2023. I'm not going to beat around the bush with it. You got to fish the Opens this year and you accomplished your goal of the Classics. So with the Classics on your future outlook as well. We have changed our format to where you have to fish all 9 Opens to make the Elite Series, but you do still have the chance to make the Classic with a specific division. But you also got to fish the Toyota Series and you qualified to fish professionally as well next year there. So what is your tournament schedule, your consistent schedule going to look like? Are you fishing the Opens? Are you doing the, 15 tournaments a year plus the Classic?
So I'm still thinking about it because it's a lot. Look, I'll say this. I'm not going to beat around the bush. The end goal for me is the Elite Series. But I'm probably going to get bashed for this. But if I'm going to do this, I've got to make my decision off of a business standpoint. I'm 24 years old. I've got to start making money. I've had a great year. Do not get me wrong. But from a business standpoint, I've got to make money. So that being said, in a perfect world, I would fish 25 events, everything I could, because I love bass fishing. I'm a guy that loves moving, going from tournament to tournament to tournament, being gone from my beautiful fiance. She hates me for saying that, but that's just how I roll. Up B, I'm moving around a lot, but I'm going to take a year and fish the invitationals just to see. Not saying I like it, not saying I'll love it. I'm just going to see. And I really want to kind of sit back. I'm going to fish one division in the Opens, the Northerns. I'm going to sit back and kind of just look at everything, pay attention to the point standings. What is it going to average out to be? How many guys are going to do it? Because, I've heard there's already like 200 guys doing it. When everybody said, oh, there won't be 50 guys doing it. I said, if they'd let 400 boats in there, I guarantee it there'd be 400 boats. So, I love Bassmaster. Everybody knows that. I love blue and gold. And the only reason I'm going to do this is because of a business standpoint for me personally. So, that's people, I'll probably get bashed for that. But then again, you got people don't understand. You've got to start. I'm about to get married. I just bought a house yesterday. So, I've got to start making these decisions because it's a business for me. This is how I'm going to provide for my family.
Yeah, I think
Don't
we
bash
respect that. No, I'm not bashing. I already knew based on our phone calls that we've had just while we're driving down the road what you were probably going to have to decide, especially with the travel. But so no, there's no bashing from this aspect. I know this is the Bassmaster podcast, but you represented the college series well on the Bassmaster Opens this year as the college representative. You get to now make the Classic two different routes with the college series and the Opens. You're still going to be in the Classic next year, but like you said, it's not every day you qualify to fish for $10,000 checks. You made $70,000 this year with your 8 Opens in the Classic, but it's not every day you qualify to fish for $10,000 checks, and you don't know what that's going to lead to, how it opens up for you. I will say if you qualify for the Classic via one of the Northern Opens, I'm going to be mad at you if the next year you don't fish all 9. You know what I'm saying? Like if you make another Classic and you don't fish all 9, I will be mad at you there. But Kyle, I think that's respectable, and congratulations on buying a house. That's something that we all have to do at a certain point in our life, most likely, and it's cool to see that and see little Tristan all grown
Nothing like paying debt.
Exactly. But Kyle, yeah, everything for 2023, for Tristan, I look forward to covering him in the Classic. But yeah, at the end of the day, you got to make your decisions based on your family.
Yeah, I hope people really truly understand that, because it's easy for a keyboard warrior to just look at this and be like, oh, he hates Bassmaster. You know what I mean? But we all 3 of us know that we do this because we love it. We love the sport, but we also do it to provide for our family.
Speaking of family and fiancés, are me and Ronnie going to be invited to the wedding?
Everybody at Bassmaster is invited to the wedding.
Well, I don't think everybody, if they're listening this far in the podcast, not everybody's going to accept and give you a gift. I'm just saying, we're going to all buy the same blender and we're going to send you 40 blenders. I'm just saying.
Hey, I'm thinking about calling Mercer and having him marrying us. So getting his license.
Boom shakalaka. Mr. and Mrs. McCormick.
No, yeah, I'm excited, man. It's this year looking back has been everything I've dreamed of and more. Not just the fishing aspect, but marrying my best friend or getting proposed to my best friend and winning the biggest tournament of my life that I never would have even dreamed of doing this young of age. And from buying a house, and it's just you sit back in the off season like we are now, and you just, or you could be laying in bed at night or whatever, and you start thinking about every little thing you did this year, because this is the first time your brain has actually got to slow down and look back on what you've accomplished, where you could have got better, where, what did this decision lead to or whatever. So it truly is, and this is the first time I've ever felt this, like, truly, because, the college standpoint, it was like, whatever, but like trying to chase this crazy dream of catching green fish and brown fish that we all have, you can actually put into perspective on what you accomplished and just take it all in. Take a second, because it's go, go, go. I mean, you guys, studio to studio to studio. You have no time. I mean, Ronnie, how many diapers have you changed this year?
Oh, I changed quite a few diapers, but don't worry. When I do walk in the door, I get to change diapers. No, but I totally get that. I mean, I told Kyle,
you know what I mean,
the other day how many live shows we have, because we do a lot of other things other than just bass. And so for next year, it's like we'll do like 39 or 40 different live shows, and some of them conflict on the same weekend and some of them don't. But that's a lot of weeks that you have to be away from your family. So you got to pick and choose. But Kyle, I don't think we could have asked for a better situation for the college classic bracket champion to represent the Opens and win one, just to give validity and legitimacy to the college series one more time.
100%. I mean, you certainly hate to see, and let's just be real transparent about it. I mean, there's been plenty of guys, win the bracket, get to fish all the Opens, and then things just don't pan out at all during the Opens. And a lot of those guys, have turned it around and since done really well. I mean, it's just a matter of, like Tristan has kind of mentioned, when you jump into the Opens your first year at that age, that's not an easy task. Not an easy task at all. So to see Tristan have that success there at the end of the year, and obviously, like he said, win that tournament there on Lake Hartwell, I think just speaks volumes to how good of an angler Tristan is. And I mean, from a personal standpoint, I can't wait to see how far, Tristan takes this and the success hopefully that he has moving forward.
For sure.
I appreciate that. Means the world. And I'm glad you touched on that too, from the college standpoint. Me representing the college has been amazing. It really has. And I told, after Hartwell, I was doing an interview with somebody, and I was like, this tournament wins great. It's amazing. It's life changing, but I want to leave a footpath for more college kids or high school kids looking up to me, or whatever it may be. I just want to leave a footprint to where it can be done. I promise you it can be done. I don't care what family you grow up in, if you're in a bass fishing family or if you're in a family that knows absolutely not a freaking thing about bass fishing, like my family. It can be done. If you have dreams, set goals, go chase them. Because I'm living proof of it right here. I never would have dreamed of in a million years. Looking back, I would be sitting where I am now on a podcast with you guys at Bassmaster. And that was my biggest thing. Again, like I said, I wanted to show that it can be done. And I feel like I've accomplished that.
And speaking of that footprint, have you talked to Louis Monetti at all since he won the bracket? And what have those conversations been like, if you have?
So when he won, I texted him and I was like, dude, listen, I know you got a lot of calls, texts. I know it's crazy. I promise you, I know exactly how it is. So, dude, call me and I'm gonna kind of walk you through on what's gonna happen. And I'm not saying Luke Stoner would do bad. Luke Stoner has been the biggest help of all, but for Louis, coming from me, he could probably get a little more out of it than talking to Stoner that he's probably never talked to. You know what I mean? You see what I'm trying to say?
Sure. Yeah, you know the next few months of his life, what it's going to be like.
Exactly. And that's what I told him. I said, dude, I can promise you, I can tell you who's going to be calling you, who's going to do this, what are you going to do with the truck, this and that. So I'm going to, he's going to call me here. He texted me the other day when we was at Rayburn. He says, dude, leave something for me or something. But dude, Louis says he's an awesome guy, and I was fired up to see him win that thing, especially And of course, they won Team of the Year too. I mean, what more could you ask for? I mean, the guy's an absolute hammer.
Yeah,
So
go
I
ahead.
see some big happening for him, especially if they go to shallow water fishery when he's got a jig in his hand. A jig.
Overrated.
Over.
In my hand, it's overrated for sure. What were you gonna say, Kyle?
I was just gonna say, me and Ronnie were definitely rooting for Lewis as well, being a public school guy, because those private school guys suck. We hate them. They're terrible.
Hey,
before
we let you go, we've had 2 years of it. Kyle's been down there for the high school combine to be able to get high school anglers in front of college coaches and have them put their somewhat skills to the test to see that. What was it like? Do you remember the process of you either getting recruited or you reaching out to Gary Mason and Bethel? Because I fished against Bethel back when they were really rising up, Dewey and Cody and Matt and Zach. And I mean, everybody, like there was iconic duos. You didn't mention one angler without the other. You guys formulated that while you were in school as well and kept that going. But for you, what was that process like getting recruited? And I mean, being on a team that's a scholarship program.
Yeah, so I really didn't fish that many high school tournaments. Just because I was big in other sports like basketball and football. So that took up a lot of my time, but I did get to fish a couple. But where I met Gary, I was fishing a local tournament out of Paris Landon. And I think this Bethel might have had a booth there or something, or Gary was there for some absurd reason or something like that. But anyways, we come in and we had a big old bag, and we ended up getting second or third. I'll never remember. I was sitting down here. I'm in my boat, like I was sitting down here on the dock, about to push away, and I just remember him standing right there on top of the dock, and he was like, you know, my name's Gary Mason. I'm
It's like a
the coach
glow
of
and an
Bethel.
aura behind him. Was there like starburst? Sun?
Yeah. And he was like, you know, would you want to come fish for college? I was like, you know, honestly, I've never thought of it. But you know, that'd be truly amazing. And I've never even heard of Bethel, really. I know that sounds terrible, but at that point of my life, you know, that I was just making that jump from riding horses to getting into fishing. So I didn't really know the ins and the outs. So, but looking back, you know, I'm so glad I did. Because not just Coach Gary, but you know, the people you meet. I mean, there's 3 Bethel alumni in the Bassmaster Classic this year.
And every
So,
year it seems, and you guys broke the tie with Auburn on having the amount of classic bracket champions, I believe. But yeah, no, I just wanted to ask about that because I didn't know where Bethel University was either until I started covering the high school and college series, and I had to, you know, drive through McKenzie, Tennessee, and watch out for that one lamppost that has a camera on it that will send you a ticket in the church parking lot.
Yep.
I don't know you don't have to pay it, I guess, but I paid it. But yeah. It's a unique area, and it is a fishing town and community, especially with Kentucky Lake during its heyday there. So cool to see that. And Kyle, do you have anything left for Tristan before we let him go?
I do want to ask him this because we're talking about college fishing. I've never asked Tristan this. You know, hearing how you got your start in college fishing, you know, mine was similar only in the fact that I was playing college baseball, playing baseball and stuff through high school super seriously, and fishing tournaments when I could, you know, in between there. And growing up was kind of the same way. So when I got to college, it seemed like my perspective was that, like, I'm a good bass fisherman. I've been good my whole life at this. I'm going to just step right into this and beat some tail. Like, I'm going to like kill it. I'm going to destroy this. And you realize really quickly how good those guys are at large. I mean, like, you know, any college tournament you fish, but especially going to Bethel, surely you showed up and was like, I got some work to do.
Yeah.
That's how it was for me. And like I said, I didn't even go to a powerhouse, you know, fishing school per se.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and you know, I didn't really know any of the guys, and I made really good friends with Ryan Winchester right off the rip. And I'll stick.
He's still fishing college, like 9 years strong. I'm pretty sure.
No, he's not.
Got 4 degrees and everything.
That's Hunter Loudon. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Hunter just became a dad. I'm super proud of all the little boys growing up now.
Yeah, for sure. But no, back to that, Kyle. You know, it is a lot of work because it's kind of scary, especially not just the fishing standpoint, but you're also leaving your family. You're going out, say so, on your own now. You're going into a whole new environment that you don't know hardly anybody. So it's scary too, along with walking into a room full of absolute hammers. And it was crazy. It was a lot of work for sure. I mean, there was a lot of work to be done, but you know, going to a powerhouse, say so, you had a lot of guys to look up to. You had a lot of guys to learn off of. And then that group keeps getting closer and closer, and then you start learning off of everybody else, and they start learning off of you, and then it goes on and on and on.
Did you guys keep score for your little club tournaments and stuff? How many times so and so won? How many times you won? Like, was there like a ranking hierarchy within the group of guys now that you guys are all out of college?
So I'm probably really gonna get bashed for this, but we never really had a club tournament. This is what we did. So we'd meet down on Wednesday nights at Eva in Camden, Tennessee, on Kentucky Lake, and there'd be about 10 boats, and whoever come back with the most fish won.
Wow.
And we knocked the sides off of every single one of them.
Oh man. Well, I'm not going to protect
Yeah.
you from the bashing if that's the thing. I didn't know where that was going either. Oh my gosh. Tristan McCormick, 2022 Hartwell Open winner, 2021 College Classic bracket champion, 2023 Classic qualifier. You could just keep naming it off. Tallest kid in the college series, I think, when I was fishing and covering it. But so many different accolades, Kyle. I'm glad we had Tristan on the podcast and that it worked out. But Tristan, congrats on your season. I hope you learned a bunch from your tough times, and I hope that you harness the good energy as you go forward next year.
I thank you guys for having me on. This has been really fun, and like I said, let's do the once a week say so garage talk.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. Well, maybe we'll have to make it quarterly. What baits this quarter have been overblown?
Yeah.
We'll do that.
see how much trouble we can get into that month.
We'll do it the week after ICAST as well. We'll really make a big slam when we see what's on the shelves there. So
well, now fellas, we can add about 24 baits.
Yeah, exactly. And a couple duck lures and some other things. Exactly. Guys, appreciate you joining me today for the podcast. Kyle, as always. Tristan, appreciate you. Good luck, and we will see you in Knoxville. I will not be singing Rocky Top, and maybe you'll catch a bass near the goalpost out in the river somewhere, hopefully.
Yep. For sure.
Awesome. See you next time.
See y'all.